After almost 4 days, I finally went back home because I did need to collect my stuff and rejoin work if I didn't want to get fired. When I showed up at home, I realized that my family had been living with Lucas under the same roof, waiting for me to come back. It would almost be touching had it not been for the circumstances under which I left. Everybody had been trying to text me and get me to respond relentlessly after I'd disappeared, but I hadn't replied to a single one of those texts. So, needless to say, there was a lot of chaos when I finally came back, and everybody made it a point to hug me and tell me how glad they were to see me. Even Melissa had the audacity to come to me and give me a giant hug with tears in her eyes when she saw me. I was too disoriented to even react to that and just stood there like a silent statue while everyone clamored around me. Then finally, once everybody had calmed down, I cleared my throat and told them that I was back only to take my things and move out for good. Lucas had just been standing there without a word up until that point, but when I said that I was going to move out, he announced that there was no need for me to leave because he'd already packed his stuff and was going to move in with Melissa since now everything was out in the open anyway. My family, my parents and my aunt, my dad's younger sister who has lived in the same house ever since her husband passed away, actually had wide smiles on their faces even though there was nothing to smile about, at least not according to me. Melissa was standing beside Lucas in an awkward side hug and looking at me very sadly but still smiling. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to ask my family what the heck were they even smiling about because as far as I was concerned, Melissa had just broken up my engagement and stolen my boyfriend of almost 5 years. There was really nothing very funny or sweet about this. My mother chose to speak up at that point and told me that they couldn't go back in time and change the past, but they could accept the future, and they knew that the future had Melissa and Lucas together in it. Granted, it was a relationship that had formed out of cheating, and they did feel sorry about it, but they also wanted me to understand and accept that this was for the best. Melissa said that she was very sorry for taking my boyfriend away from me, but she couldn't help falling in love with him. She wished that she could have told me earlier and I didn't have to find out this way, but apparently, they were madly in love and wanted to spend their lives with each other. Then the two of them kissed right in front of me, and my mother had the audacity to even wipe a tear from her eye. I snapped and told them that this wasn't supposed to be sentimental or emotional and that what they were doing was disgusting. To my surprise, my family seemed to get annoyed with my behavior and told me that I was being too bratty about the situation. Instead of being happy for my sister, I was making this all about myself, and they didn't approve of my behavior. I was stunned by their attitude about this and told them all to get the heck out of my house that very moment. I couldn't for the life of me understand how they were defending what Melissa and Lucas had done while making me out to be the bad guy and acting as though I was overreacting. My father intervened and told me not to act like a child because these things happen and I should take it in my stride. He wanted me to celebrate that my sister had finally found her soulmate instead of being jealous of her. They were literally all acting insane and I couldn't deal with it anymore, so I just said screw it, went into my room, packed some of my things, and left yet again without even speaking to them or waiting to hear them out, even as they called out my name and told me not to go. I really didn't have anything left to say to them because it was very clear to me that they cared more about Melissa and her happiness than about me or even about what was right and wrong. They were so caught up in trying to justify what Melissa had done that they completely forgot that I was also a human being with real feelings as well. Update. My sister kissed my fiance on our engagement night, but my family took her side. 5 years later she is at my doorstep begging for money and my family is furious I won't give her a dime. After that day, my family tried to contact me several times, but I never responded to them because I didn't think that I owed it to them. A couple of weeks later, I even received an invitation to Melissa and Lucas' wedding, which I declined, obviously. All the common friends that Lucas and I had also declined the wedding invitation in solidarity with me, and even a couple of relatives who knew the truth refused to interact with my family after they learned how they had treated me in the aftermath of the party. It's been 5 years, and I've pretty much cut them out of my life entirely. They occasionally tried to weasel their way back into my life by wishing me on my birthday or New Year, but I always ignored them. I never even blocked any of them, even though I did remove them from my following and friend lists. Since I have a public account, they could see what I was up to, which is what I wanted. I wanted them to see and I wanted them to know that I was leading a fabulous life and keep burning with jealousy. It was petty, but it was the least I could do after how they screwed me over. Up until recently, I barely even had a clue of what they've been up to in the last couple of years. My mother called me about 4 days ago from a number that I didn't have saved. When I answered the call and realized that it was my mom on the other end, I immediately tried to hang up, but she begged me desperately for one chance to talk to me because apparently they were in dire need of help. I agreed to talk to her for just a couple of minutes, but only because she sounded so upset and my humanity didn't allow me to turn my back on her at that moment. She told me that Melissa and Lucas had started a business of their own a couple of years ago, but it was failing badly and their investors were all backing out because they were failing to make any profit at all. So, they borrowed more money, but even that didn't help their business and now they were neck-deep in debt and the loan sharks were all after them. They were being hounded by everyone from their employees to their investors and the people they had borrowed money from. My mother knew that I lived a luxurious lifestyle and could afford to help them out, so she had turned to me as a last resort and was begging me to help them out by loaning them some money so they could pay off their debts. It was no small amount either. She was asking me for almost $75,000. I asked her why Melissa wasn't calling me if she needed help and why she was making my mother speak to me on her behalf. My mother told me that Melissa and Lucas didn't even know that she was coming to me for help, as they had given her strict instructions not to approach me. I guess we all still remember exactly what happened 5 years ago. Melissa didn't want me to know any of this and wasn't ready to take help from me, but my mother didn't know anybody else who would have that kind of money and would give it to them at the drop of a hat. A couple of months had already passed, and Melissa and Lucas were struggling to even put food on the table. My parents were helping them all they could, and even Lucas' family was trying to give them all that they possibly could, but it was just not enough. Even they had to be able to support themselves in the future, so it was impossible for them to just give away all the money that they'd saved over the years, especially because most of my family was retired, and so were Lucas' parents. That's why my mother, with no other options left, had called me to request help. Now, I could afford to help them out, but I really didn't want to. Melissa was right for not contacting me to ask for help. They'd lost the right to make any demands from me the day they cheated on me. I told my mother that I couldn't help them, and even if I could, I wouldn't. My mother sounded very upset and told me that I was being cruel and that I needed to think about my family. I told her that Melissa and Lucas hadn't thought about me when they had that affair, and neither did my family think about me while they were supporting the two of them, so right now there was no need for me to think about them either. I'd worked hard to get to the position where I am today, and I wasn't about to just go and drop $75,000 on two people who didn't even deserve it. My mother then began to cry on the phone and told me that she had never expected me to grow up to be so selfish and claimed that my sister and her husband would end up in big trouble if I didn't help them out. I said that it was just too bad, but I couldn't help them, and then I hung up. Since then, my mother has been sending me several texts every hour, begging me to reconsider and think about my sister for once. She said that this was not the time for petty revenge and that the trouble that Melissa was in was very serious, so if I didn't help her now, I really would regret it in the future. She's being crazy, and I don't understand what to say to her because I don't want to feel like the bad guy here either. Am I the asshole for not helping my sister out financially after she stole my fiance 5 years ago? Update 1. So, I finally blocked my family. I hadn't done that earlier because, A, I wanted them to see what I was up to and feel jealous of me, and B, because I thought that cutting them off entirely could be something that I would regret in case something bad were to happen to them. But I don't really care now. I should have removed them 5 years ago. I don't understand why I even kept them around for so long. That is what was petty of me. Refusing to help my sister out now isn't petty. It's just the logical thing to do. They'd already wasted tons and tons of money, and I'm sure that even if I give them the money right now, they won't be able to repay it. And $75,000 is a pretty big amount, so I might be well off, but that doesn't mean I can just drop that sort of money and not expect it back. Even if this was a close friend of mine who I was helping, I still would expect that money back. And here, these are neither people who are close to me nor my loved ones, nor can I expect them to pay me back, so there's really no reason for me to help them out. It's as simple as that. I told a couple of my friends about this too, to get their opinion on it, and they agreed that I'd done the right thing by refusing to give them the money, not even out of a feeling of revenge, but mostly because it was completely impractical and stupid to even expect me to help them when they were the ones who had screwed me over in the past. But anyway, my mother is blocked now and she can't contact me to guilt trip me anymore, so I have nothing to worry about.